So one of the things that like with Americans we obsess about, right? Because it's such a big part of our culture is
Yes.
tipping.
Yeah.
And if you don't give a tip, like I can speak for myself, I get very anxious. Like sometimes I'll be getting a massage, I'll be eating in a restaurant, and I start cycling through my head of like what's appropriate. I don't want to mess up with the culture. Like I want to make sure that I'm acting or I'm assimilating to the culture I'm in, and I'm acting appropriately. Because in Japan, in Japan, it's actually disrespectful if you tip. Yeah, so
Mm.
if you tip at the restaurant, you're basically like saying they're below you, and like
I see.
it's
Wow.
a bad thing to tip. Whereas like you go a lot of places, and if you go some places, then you're messing with their economy and you're hurting the local people.
Mm.
Whereas like if you tip too less, or you tip too much, like it can, and I get
Oh,
very
it's like an insult to them.
yeah, yeah, it's an insult. Or sometimes you go to places and if you tip too much, then you ruin it. You you make it so the locals treat future foreigners differently, and you make it so maybe even they treat local people differently.
Mm.
Because I would see this very many times in Cambodia. You
Mm.
would have these non-government organizations come in,
I see.
and they would overpay for hotel rooms, they would overpay for taxis, they would overpay for food. So the whole economy changed to where now your local people, they can't afford to go to the hotels, they can't afford to use the taxis, they can't afford the restaurants,
Oh.
and even like taxis wouldn't pick up locals. In some places, they only wanted foreigners because they know they would get three
Oh,
or
I
four
see.
times the amount.
Wow, that's really unfortunate or unfair.
Yeah, yeah, exactly. A lot of people sometimes when they come out, they only see it as like, well, I'm giving extra, so I'm being nice. They don't think long term, or they don't think expansively to understand their money does change things in the long run for people.
Yes.
But okay, so that's tipping. Today I'm here at Festive Walk Mall with Vanessa,
Yes.
and she has a YouTube channel as well as being very knowledgeable about Ilo Ilo. Vanessa, what's your channel name, Vanessa?
My channel is PinayWanderer 20.
Excellent. So I'll go ahead and put that in a link below so you guys can check that out. Vanessa was telling me all sorts of stuff about her experience here in Iloilo and Camaris. Now you used to work for the government here.
Yes, for 7 years I was working at the Iloilo City Hall. For the first is for the vice mayor's office, then upgraded to mayor's office.
So you've been living in Iloilo City for a while, but you weren't born here.
Yes, I was born here, like then grew up in Guimaras Island. So
Okay.
I can, uh, I'm versatile. I can live both in province and city.
All right.
City and province girl.
Excellent. So for those unfamiliar, Camaris is you have if you look at the map, you have Iloilo City, and then right off of it, it's what about 15-minute ferry ride?
No, just 10 minutes
10 minutes.
ferry ride.
10-minute ferry ride, and then you have a large island called Camaris right to the south of the city. And
Yes.
that island is very famous for having the Philippines' most delicious mangoes.
Yes.
What is kind of the tipping culture here in the Philippines?
The tipping culture, as far as I know, because my brother works in a restaurant as well. So in here, it's not necessarily that you are required to put a tip. It's a voluntary. How much amount would you like to give to the waiter or to the restaurant? Because they have this tip box wherein you can put any amount that you'd like.
Is there like something that makes a Filipino person more or less likely to tip?
If the waiter was really nice or accommodate them well and whatever stuff they asked for. So that's also one thing. And the food that they serve, if they like it, they probably going to give a good tip. Usually, there's no specific amount that you can give. It's voluntary, as I mentioned earlier. Whatever amount that you'd like to give to the restaurant. And usual for that, if they have the tip box, as far as I know, they divided it to the staff after end of the month once they collected the tip inside the tip box. So they divide it to every like workers in the restaurant.
Okay, so what is it kind of similar to where I was in Thailand? They hand you the bill,
Mm.
and you put the tip in the bill, and it gets divvied up between the cooks and the servers and everyone. Whereas if you hand it directly to them to their hand, they get to keep it personally, or is it different than that?
Uh, Sometimes there are also that kind of setup that they wanted to give personally to the persons. That is totally fine. But for if that person won't accept it, or for example, the waiter won't accept it, they would suggest to put it on the tip box because they divide it equally to every service crews.
I get water delivery to my condominium,
Hmm.
and when I do that, I usually give the guy, I throw in like an extra 5 or 10 pesos, and that seems like, from what I was told, the lady says that's normal. Now, do you tip food delivery drivers at all?
Yes,
What would be a normal tip for that?
usually I give like 20-30 pesos tip.
Okay, and so 20 to 30 pesos, regardless of how far it's going, is just kind of the standard for you.
Yes, it depends on how much you give. Sometimes you can give also aside from uh the online tip amount, you can also give it in cash.
Okay. Personally, I always tip cash because in America, it's also a culture of like keeping the government out of your business
Yes.
because you don't want any logs of what you're giving someone. Like it's so you get to keep your privacy and your independence from the
Yes.
government. It's kind of a U.S. way of looking at things. But okay, so 20 to 30 pesos for the delivery drivers. Do you tip tricycle, jeepney, or taxi drivers?
Yes.
What would be like kind of the tip when you do those things?
Usually if like recently I took a taxi from SM going to my house. So I my bill is just around 70 pesos something. So I did not take the change anymore. I gave him flat 100 pesos and the rest he can keep it.
Okay, so just you kind of round it up
Yeah.
to the 100 peso mark. Generally, when I take the jeepney, I don't tip. I usually just get my change back. And
Yes.
when I take a tricycle, I usually just round up to 20 peso because where I was at in Dumaguete, the tricycle costs 15 peso.
Yes.
So I would just hand them 20 peso and walk away. But then prices change. Do you take the tricycle at all when you're going around?
Yes.
What do you have, like, is there a flat fee here? Like, how much does a tricycle cost here anywhere you live?
Depending on the distance, but from here, for example, from McDonald's over there, going to my um, house or my yeah, in front of the supermarket across the house, it's 15 pesos.
Okay.
So sometimes I just walk, or sometimes I take a tricycle. So yeah, 15 pesos, or I give them 20, sometimes like
Okay, so sometimes you pay 15 pesos, sometimes you pay
that. Yeah.
20. And okay, so it's pretty similar to the way I do it. It's just usually I just give
Yes.
20. Okay, so now do you tip in the jeepney at all?
They gave me a change, so I accept it.
Okay,
So
yeah.
usually I have already like if I don't have bills and I have like coins, so I give exact amount. If because currently the fare is like 12 pesos or 13 pesos, so I give exact amount.
Okay, okay, so you're doing the same thing
Yeah.
I'm doing because I'm trying to act like a Filipino person when I'm here when it comes to money. So, uh,
Sometimes if I ordered something like if they don't have change, so it's like okay, just it's just a small amount, so I don't take the change anymore. I just give it back.
oh, okay, so like kind of like if you order something online.
Yeah.
Okay, that's one thing that's going to vary compared to America and Canada. Is here in the Philippines when they have delivery of like Amazon or Shopee or one of these services, they'll allow you to pay cash
Yes.
at delivery, whereas
Cash.
that really doesn't happen in our countries. But that's very common here. Thailand, other Southeast Asian countries, they'll allow you to pay cash when it's delivered.
Yes.
So you kind of tip above if they don't have change, and you just make it happen.
Yeah.
I go to a barber and
Mhm.
I get exactly the haircut I want, and he does a great job. What do you think would be normal for a Filipino man to tip?
Usually it's a like 100 peso
Okay.
amount
Okay.
because that's what I did when I have my haircut at the salon. So I I'm always the returning customer of that salon, and there was this specific um worker there that I asked to do the haircut, to do the hot oil on my hair, this and that. So I gave 100 peso tip for that most of the
Okay. All right. So that's about what I've been doing from the research I did. Was 100 was a normal. 100 is normal for a man or a woman.
time.
I think also from what I've heard, like 50 pesos is good. It's one of those things of like many people don't tip at all.
Yes.
But you know, if you get very good service and they've done things to your liking, give them about 100 peso for a haircut. That's the norm
Yes.
enough.
Actually,
Thing.
before I don't give a tip, to be honest.
Yeah.
But when my aunt, we dined last previously in a certain restaurant. So my aunt taught me that you should give a tip amount, at least any amount that you'd like to give, if because the workers deserve it, something like that. So most of the time, if I dine or in a restaurant or I did the delivery, I gave the tip, even though it's just a small amount. Like the list is 10 pesos.
Yeah, okay, okay. So kind of the least tip you should ever be given is 10 pesos. Otherwise,
Yes.
it might seem like it's more disrespectful to give under 10 pesos than, unless it's like a roundup situation, right?
Yes.
Like we talked about with the trike or
Yes.
something like that. Okay, excellent. So I think that pretty much covers tipping. Important afterthought. Vanessa was very generous to go ahead and share her personal experience with us as far as tipping, and I would almost assure that it's been influenced highly by her exposure to Westerners. A majority of the Filipino people don't seem to tip at all. So if you don't get the service you want, feel free not to tip and you'll be assimilated in the culture. Obviously, you don't want to undertip, you don't want to overtip. We talked about that. But I think this will kind of give you a baseline of the way you should act in the Philippines. So I hope you enjoyed. Feel free to check out some other videos, and I'll see you in the next video.